Alrighty, hello everyone. It is about 3 o'clock here on the East Coast, and that means we are good to go ahead and kick this thing off. Welcome to training number 2, focused on planning with Asset Map. Before we get started here, just a quick housekeeping item. There are two options here in the Zoom to submit your questions. We have Q&A and chat. For this webinar, I encourage you to go ahead and use the chat feature when submitting your questions. I will keep an eye on the chat as we go through training, and I will leave time at the end of our call here to get to any questions I have yet to answer. But I am so excited for today's call because I love this part of the asset map process. Once we've got these beautiful maps built out, all these great data points on there, cash flows, assets, insurances, let's use that information. Let's let the client know that they're on track to hit their goals, or if they're not, what we can do today to move that ball forward. So we'll dive right in. There's a lot of good stuff ahead. Let's jump in first and foremost by introducing myself. My name is John. I'm an onboarding advisor here at Asset Map. I am actually a former Asset Map user myself. I worked for many years as a paraplanner on the advice side of the industry. Since 2016, I have built out hundreds of maps for my clients, and I have seen the power of this tool firsthand in practice many, many times. So believe me when I say this. Bringing the asset map process into your existing process or developing a whole new one around it really does have the potential to pay some serious dividends. I also have an 8-year-old daughter who is the light of my life. We recently watched the Wicked musical as a family, and now it's more apparent every day that I'm raising a future theater kid. And I couldn't be more proud as a former one myself. Finally, I have 5 cats and 2 dogs in this house, and I work from home, so I always have a front row to the circus, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Fortunately, at this time of day, they are usually lounging quietly, so I'm very grateful to them for that. But enough about me. Let's frame out today's agenda. We'll be covering quite a bit when it comes to planning in Asset Map. This is the reason we don't squeeze planning into that first call. We want to take the full 50-odd minutes here and dive deep into all the ways you can use the asset map to have some robust, simplified, yet powerful planning conversations within this application. Starting off with our preferences, because every advisor on this call is different, and the way you interact with your clients, it's unique to you. So let's go ahead and set up your defaults so that every target map you run follows your own unique scenarios, and then from there, we customize those maps to the individual client. But the power of signals is really where we'll start today, because signals are a great segue into that broader planning conversation. I can use our signals to look at a household through a very high level, through 6 different lenses, and see where the potential pain points might lie. And then we know to prioritize those topics in our conversation. And the name of the game here is going to be how quickly we can create those target maps once we know what road we want to go down. It does not take me hours of my time. It does not output a big, thick 80-page packet. It takes usually a couple of minutes. I want to know what the client's goals are, what we have on this map that'll go towards funding those goals, and what that means. Where are we at today towards hitting that goal, and what can we do today to help move that ball forward? This whole process does not take long, but it is very engaging. The client is leaning in throughout, and they're open to a lot of the conversation we'll be having. But cloning target maps here is probably going to be my favorite feature in this whole list, because cloning is a very powerful tool. I like to build one target map first. Let's say I build my retirement scenario. Here is us retiring at this age, taking this much income, living until we're 100, etc. Okay, great. There's my retirement target map. But now what I can do is I can clone that baseline. Let me paint another scenario. All the parameters are the same, except for one. What if I show you a higher rate of return? What if I show you taking Social Security a bit later? What about selling your business? What about retiring at a different time? I can plug in these different variables to those clone target maps and show at a very high level what impact those differences will make. The cash flow details are where we'll dive a bit deeper into the weeds of the target map. Hey, show me the behind the scenes. How are we getting this math? How does it work out? If we're running out of capital at some point in this plan, when does that occur? And let me use all of this information in the cash flow details to determine what the best next steps are for my client. And finally, reporting. The beautiful part of target maps is that they do not output a big, thick, incomprehensible 80-page packet. Most target maps can report out on 1 or 2 pages. Because again, I just want to know, what do you want? What do you have towards funding that goal? And what does it mean? Where are we today? And what can we do? But I am not going to bore you today with a whole bunch of slides. We will actually be live in app for the majority of this conversation. I'm going to switch my screen right now over to an asset map I have built out specific for this call. You should see that map popping up on your end right now. If you would not mind in the Zoom chat, go ahead and just type the word yes. Let me know my audio is coming through nice and clear, and you can see my household on the screen okay. When I see a couple yeses, I will know I'm good to keep going. In the meantime, quick sip of water. I have a lot of talking to do. All right, awesome. I'm seeing some yeses in the chat. Appreciate that. I do see someone asking about recordings. Yes, if you are attending this webinar, when you are all done, you'll get an email from Zoom with a recorded version of this training. It might not be today's version. It might be one from a week or two ago, but it will be the same content. It'll be me talking for an hour straight. So feel free to watch the recording, refresh yourself. If some of this goes over your head, please feel free to watch the recording or ask me questions live. That's what I'm here for. So let's dive right in right now to the Flintstone family. Let's start by doing a quick refresher. How did we get this map built? Well, maybe the Flintstones came on as new prospects a couple of years ago. And when they first came in, I sent them my Discovery Interview tool, which is a simple fact finder. And I want rough estimates and round numbers. Tell me what you have, where it's at. Give me the basics. And you know what? Despite their best efforts, they are always going to forget some information, and that's okay. Because Discovery gets me a nice foundation, gets me a couple tiles filled out. Whatever I'm missing, that's where I use my stencils. I use the stencils to fill in the gaps in the map with these meaningful, intentional little gray box placeholders. And during our first conversation, we simply address them live. Hey, do you know your Social Security estimates? Do you have any old employer plans? What about long-term care for your parents? Is that an important consideration? Let's have those conversations. That's what stencils are very good at doing, allowing you, the advisor, to frame out the agenda for this meeting. Now, we had that first meeting. Let's fast forward a bit. Let's get to the present day. Fred and Wilma are now great clients. We've got a couple accounts we manage. We sold a policy or two. They love us. They trust us. They take our advice. Awesome. So they're coming in tomorrow for an annual review. Now, before they come in, here is one of my best practices, having used this tool for about 9 years now. Before every annual review, if you can, it is best to pull that map up like a day ahead of time and just sit there and stare at it for like 30 seconds. It is a great use of your time because as you get better at this, you will start to see things that jump off the page at you. For example, here, I look at this map and I see, all right, Fred's got some good income, good for him. Wilma's got some good income, awesome. I go to the top and see we got a 3-year-old kid up here. And that brings my eyes right down to this section right here. In the event we lose Fred or Wilma prematurely, is there sufficient insurance coverage here that this 3-year-old kid is going to be okay? Hard to say yes at a glance because look at this. Wilma makes some good income, but she only has this one-time salary group term policy. So should something happen to Wilma, this income goes away. Are we sure that Fred can sustain the quality of life for him and his daughter? That's worth asking. I am seeing a potential life insurance gap on this map just by staring at it. And so I'm going to make a mental note. When this client comes in and sits down, I got to bring up the insurance coverage I'm seeing here, right? I'm seeing a gap. I want to make sure we address it. So that right there is an example of why you want to stare at these maps ahead of time, because you'll start to see all these great opportunities or questions you want to ask the client, make those notes, and during the meeting, bring them up. Now, while I'm also doing that, I might as well make my edits to the map, right? Make sure my values are up to date. Now, if I'm using one of our many integrations, I might simply just right-click on the map, go to my integration section here, and sync all the data from one of them. In this case, nitrogen. Okay, great. Click it. All the linked accounts sync in a couple of seconds. Or I can update these tiles manually. And I still do this to this day. I've been doing it for 9 years this way. It's not going to change anytime soon because it never takes me longer than a couple of minutes to simply pull up the accounts I manage. In this case, let's say it's Wilma's Roth at Schwab. Open it up, check that current value. Let's say, oh, on my other monitor, I see it's up to 188. Enter in 188 right there, make that value today's date, and then click update. That took me about 3 seconds. It does not take long to fully update the entire map manually. I still update every single map this way. In the last 9 years, it has never taken me longer than about 5 minutes on average. And the added benefit of doing it manually is that you get more acclimated to what this client situation is. I like to take some time and reassess what we're looking at here because, again, you will find things you might not have been aware of before. Take the time, stare at the map, prepare yourself for this conversation. Now, that whole process, like I said, doesn't take long, but I can't update everything. There will always be some information on here I don't know the current numbers on. Like I don't manage their bank accounts. I don't know what's in checking or in savings. Those numbers are as of last meeting. So I don't know what I'm going to put in there. I'm going to make sure that we have Fred and Wilma involved in this case, though. Maybe I send this map to them a week ahead of time and say, hey, give me some new values here. Or we simply do it live at the beginning of the appointment. I prefer that latter method. I like to sit down with this client and use language like this. Hey, Fred, Wilma, great to see you both. Thanks for coming in. I've made some updates to your asset map based on what I know about you, but I want to make sure all these values are current. I have your savings here at about 150. That's still about how much is in there. And they might say, no, John, we actually just redid our floors in the house. We spent about $30,000 on that. So it should be more like 120 now. Awesome. I'm going to now open this tile up right in front of them and enter in that new value, $120,000. And of course, I'm going to ask about their floors. Hey, show me a picture. You go with hardwood, tile, laminate. What are we looking at here? Because the beginning of the appointment is when we build that rapport. Simply have a conversation, catch up. I like doing that part of the meeting. So we do that with the client. We pull this map up and we say, hey, what's changed? What's different? What is missing on this map? And I want them to find things. I like when I'm wrong. I like when the client says, hey, my house is more than that. Hey, my mortgage is less than that. Hey, you're missing my outside brokerage account I never tell you about. Awesome. Well, tell me about it now. Where is it? How is it allocated? What is your plan with it, right? Are we going to bring that over into the fold sometime soon? Or do I just leave it on the map right here and ask you about it every time we get together? So I like to make sure the map is fully built out because when we talk about our planning conversations, that is an important distinction to make. I cannot give you the best advice unless I know that most, not all the data is on here. So that is how the first 5 minutes of our meeting tend to go. We pull this map up and get the client engaged, get them adding things, updating things. And I want them to look at this now and say, yep, that all looks good. We are current. We are up to date. Perfect. Now I am looking at a snapshot in time of the Flintstone family. But what does it mean? Now that's where signals and target maps come into play, because once I've got all this great present day data, I want to know what your goals are and how on track we are currently towards funding those goals. So we'll dive deeper into a lot of those conversations in just a bit here. But a really good segue into those planning discussions is going to be with our signals tool, because once this map is fully built, the signals will help me determine where the areas of highest concern are. Well, signals live in two different places here on the asset map. Over on the left, they are right here in the signals section. You can actually see a whole separate page with all 6 signals on it. But also on the right, we have signals living over here in our sidebar feature. I like to use signals on this right side column because when I pull them up in here, I'm going to keep the whole asset map in view at the same time. Generally, when I'm presenting to a client, I want to keep this asset map in view as often as I can. But here are those 6 different signals I talked about. They are based on our 6 financial fire drills. Questions I want to ask a client to make sure, hey, if this event occurs in your household, what is your plan to weather that financial storm? The first one here is liquidity. You can see I'm giving them a green check mark. Now, why is that? Well, let's click on it. That'll expand the signal down, and we can actually read what this signal is looking at on the map right here. I am looking at right now, if we have a liquidity need, we need cash fast, can we meet 3 months of our total gross income? So the signal looks at right here, the gross income for Wilma and for Fred. Can I meet 3 months of that or 1/4 of it? Well, scroll down here and you'll see that yes, we got that good amount in our savings account. Checking is pretty solid here. And we have this beautiful non-qualified brokerage account. If we really had to, we could liquidate some stock and make some cash happen pretty fast. So as far as liquidity goes, I'm not super concerned there. That one gets a green light and lets us know that this is probably not our highest priority. But the next signal shows us a potential pain point. If I open up this one for long-term disability, you will see they have a red light here. Now, why is this light red? Well, you can read this paragraph to see what we're basing it on, but what's cool about signals in the sidebar feature is this little eyeball icon right here. If I click on that eyeball, it will show me on the asset map all of those related financials I am using when looking at this signal. Now, why is disability shown as red? Well, because first, what do you want? If we are disabled, what is our goal? Our goal is usually to replace a portion, if not most, of this income. What do I have to do that? Well, Fred has a small policy here through his employer. Wilma currently has no disability coverage. This is why it is showing as a red light, because Wilma is the breadwinner here. If she loses this good income coming in, there's no policy that kicks on to help pay for that loss of income. So what do? Well, in a target map, I could go down here and start trying to self-fund. All right, Wilma, we go for your savings first, then we go for your brokerage account. If that's not enough, oh gosh, we got to come for your qualified money. No one wants that. Or maybe I sell disability coverage and I propose a policy to Wilma and say, hey, here's my idea. Let's get this individual DI policy, put it into place, and I show it in the target map. When I put the policy in, the thing goes from 17% funded to 78% funded. And Wilma says, wow, great. Where do I sign? So that's where target maps come in very handy. Show me where the need is. And then, hey, you, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, what can I do to solve that need? Show me the way. So that signal for disability, it's red, but let's take some action. Let's do something about it. Now, we won't be running this target map today. The first one we'll run instead is just below that for loss of life. Now, this shows up as yellow. Why is it yellow? Well, again, you can read this paragraph. You could also just look by clicking that eyeball icon and see that, yes, in a loss of life scenario, my goal is similar to disability. I am trying mainly to replace income. What do I have to fund that? Well, we actually do have some coverage here. Fred's got a whole life. Wilma's got that one-time salary group term. So between the two of them, they have something. They have some coverage. That's why the signal's yellow. But it's yellow because it might not be sufficient coverage. We want to dive deeper and make sure we're in a good place here. So this will be the first target map we run together today. We'll run that in just a bit. Before we do, let's hit up these last 3 signals. Long-term care is an area I did a lot of business using asset map in practice, if only because having a stencil that always says long-term care on it in little gray box here is a great slow drip marketing campaign. I love to leave those stencils on there. But they're showing up as green because I took care of this last time we got together. I sold them a joint policy, covers both of them for long-term care expenses, has them feeling pretty good. So the signal now looks green. We could still run the target map and see the deeper analysis. Where exactly are we? Are we looking 100% or are we 80%? What can we do to make ourselves more comfortable here? Because that signal is green, we probably don't have to dive too in depth on that because we have higher priorities. Next up here is longevity. This is by far and away the target map you will probably run the most often because this is retirement funding. Am I on track to outlive my money? Or can my money outlive me? That latter option is what we want. So how can we make it happen? Well, this signal is looking at a whole lot more funding sources on the map here. In retirement, I'm going to turn on every faucet I got to try to make it work. Now they're looking green right here, but I almost always want to dive deeper on this conversation and see exactly where we're at for retirement funding. And if we're not fully there, what can we do today to move that ball forward? So we'll run that target map together toward the end of this call. If you have questions, that's a great time to ask them. I tend to get a lot of questions on that one. But last but not least for the signals here is legal, which you see I have actually turned gray because I, the advisor, have chosen to snooze this signal. I can override any of these signals I want to because I know my client better than this algorithm does. If the signal does not apply, feel free to override it, snooze it. If I wake this one up, you'll see that yes, legal is showing up as red. It almost always is. Why? Because, hey, Fred, Wilma, if someone trips over your lawn sprinkler and sues you, how much of the assets here on the map are at risk? Well, unless you have umbrella insurance covering these things, or you have all your stuff held in a trust, for example, usually this shows as a red X. If that is not a concern to you or the client, come down here, click snooze, override this for a period of time or indefinitely, and then turn the thing gray. You can override any of these signals you'd like to. Another good example of that would be up here for disability insurance. If I have a client who is already retired, taking their Social Security, not working, they probably don't care about disability coverage. Feel free to override that because, hey, they're not working. So those are our signals. They are a great segue into these target map conversations. I have many advisors using them in different ways. Some advisors, especially on our elite plan, like to use signals as a way to mine the book of business. Let me sort my entire household index by signal. Show me everyone who has a red light for long-term care coverage. Let me do a big campaign push this quarter to try to get them covered. Or we share the signals with the client, show them where the areas of concern are and what we want to focus our attention on in the upcoming months and years. For now, though, let's use them as a jumping off point into that broader target map conversation. I'm going to run a loss of life target map right here from the signal and see exactly where we're at today if we lost Fred Flintstone. He's my target for this first target map. I can see all the other target maps down below, as well as a custom and template option. Once you grasp the basic logic of target maps and how they work, you can run a custom target map on any topic under the sun. My client's buying a vacation home in 5 years. My client is trying to pay for their daughter's wedding. My client needs to fund a special needs trust. Okay, great. Build a custom target map. What do you want? What is that goal? What do we have towards funding the goal? And what does it mean? So we'll start with loss of life here. Click create, and we'll follow that 3-question approach. The first question is always going to be, what do you want? What are the goals we are funding for here? So on my target maps, when I start them, I begin every target map conversation here on the first section called what you want. By default, if you have not changed this setting in your account, you will start every single target map over here in the third section for what it means. I don't think that makes as much sense because you can't know what it means really until you've plugged in your variables. So I'll show you in a bit where we can change that setting. I recommend starting at the very beginning. A very good place to start for my Sound of Music fans out there. Let's dive into this one. When I lose a household member, what is my first goal? Well, my default is replacing income, and I'm using 50% as my number. If you have a different number you want to use, in your target map preferences, you can change all of these defaults. But if my default is half of the income, that would be for Fred about $75,000. I'm going to start funding that to Wilma right now. I pretend Fred was struck by a bolt of lightning yesterday, and I keep paying Wilma until he would have turned age 67. So this is a basic human life value. replacing the rest of his income until he would have retired, increasing that amount by 2% each year to keep up with inflation. And what do I have to have today in net capital to replace that income for that length of time? The answer is about 410 grand. Awesome. That is my first line item. That's my first goal. Next up here is transitional income. Hey, for those 3 years after a death, things get pretty dicey. Here is some extra income for you, Wilma, just for the first 3 years as you adjust to the new normal of not having a loved one around, increasing that by 2% each year. I need to have another 130 or so to fund that. Next up is debt obligations. Now, I recommend going through the entire target map side by side with your client because they are most effective when they are used interactively. I don't just want to use my default numbers in here. I want to plug in the client's actual goals, not what my defaults say. So debt obligations is a fun one because what I'm doing here is taking all the liabilities across the entire map, put them in one number and saying, hey, Wilma, if Fred was gone tomorrow, is one of your goals to pay off all the debt in the household overnight? And she might think about that and say, you know what? God forbid Fred was gone and missed him so much. Oh, it'd be tragic. But we are locked into a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 2.8%, and I love making that mortgage payment. I am in no rush to pay that down. All right, fair enough. Wilma's goal is not paying off all the debt. She likes paying her super low interest mortgage, and the rest of that debt is probably the business's debt. We're not going to pay off the business debt if Fred's gone, right? The business takes care of that. So for Wilma's sake, this is not a goal she's trying to fund for. So let's uncheck this box and look what happens to our target map. We are now a lot more funded up here because I'm not trying to make 710 grand disappear overnight. So do that with every target map you run. Your defaults are a good starting point, but override them with whatever the client's goals are. Sometimes they match up. Hey, Wilma, is 10 grand enough for a funeral? She says, yeah, sure. Great. Leave that one alone. That's good. Next up is education funding. Fred wants to make sure if he is gone that Pebbles has some of her college costs taken care of. So he wants today's dollars, 30,000 bucks, set aside for the 4 years that she goes to school from 18 to 22. And he wants to assume that 5% COLA on higher education costs. So guess what? This $30,000 is today's value of college. By the time we take it in 2040, this number might be more like $65,000 because we are assuming college gets about 5% more expensive every year. Might be a bit conservative, but hey, if that's what happens, I want to make sure I have money to fund for it, which I would need about 103,000 bucks to do that. Then last but not least, down here we have emergency reserves. Here is a pile of money for you, Wilma, if you need it. Now this number is probably way too high, so I'm going to come in and edit it. Let me take this language out of here because I'm not going to use half of the entire household's income. For one, they have a business on this map. That business is probably skewing this number up a bit. I'm going to override it and ask Wilma, hey, how much do you want set aside for emergencies? And she might say, I don't know, like $100,000. Perfect. Here is $100,000 available right now because Fred is currently 60. I'm not going to give it an end age. The reason being is I want a one-time lump sum $100,000. I don't want 100 grand each year for a period of years. So leave the end age off and that'll give us a one-time funding goal. Wilma, take this 100 grand, put it in a shoebox, don't ever touch it unless you need it. There we go. There's the emergency fund. So I add all of these goals up and I find this number up top. Where is the bar? What do I need to have today in net capital to make this goal a reality? Well, the answer is about $753,000, 753. So that's the bar, that's the goal, that's what I want to have if we lose Fred. Okay, the first part is done. We know the what you want. Let's go now to the second part. What do you have towards funding this goal? Now, this second part is where all the great data from the asset map gets fed over. My cash flows, my assets, my insurances. And this is why I recommend before running any target maps, make sure the asset map you are working off of has been fully built and is up to date. Because all that data feeds over here into our target map. However, If I add things or change things in the target map screen here, it does not affect the asset map values at all because the target map here is like a sandbox while the asset map is my present day snapshot of the household. So I can play around with these numbers if I want to, but for a life insurance scenario, this tends to be pretty simple. By default, I am not using cash flow sources to fund. I am not using assets. The only thing I'm using in this case is the insurance Fred currently has, $500,000. If he's gone tomorrow, that pays out tax-free $500,000. No COLA, no taxes. This is pretty simple math here. So today we have the equivalent of $500,000. What does it mean? If we lose Fred right now, we need to have 753 to pay for all these goals we just said were important. What do we currently have? Insurance coverage of about $500,000. Where am I at today? What does it mean? What is that deficit? It's very simple math. I am short to hit this goal by about $250,000. Now, this is not the end of the world. It's the beginning of the conversation. What can we do today to make sure that Wilma and Pebbles will be okay if we lose Fred? Well, I think of 3 good ideas right away off the top of my head. And they're all insurance based. My first one is, hey, Fred, you make good income. You work for a large employer. Why don't you have group term coverage through work? That's a cheap, easy way to add more benefit here. I don't even get paid on that. That is just me being a nice guy. But if you really want to pay me, I did sell you this whole life policy down here. We can buy up additional coverage on that. That will build more cash value, and we can use that in retirement. Look at that, 2 birds, 1 stone. Or maybe it's as simple as, hey, your daughter is 3 years old. Here is 15 or 20-year term insurance. Cheap, easy, not much paperwork required there. Maybe some underwriting, I don't know. But we have given them 3 good ideas on how to solve this need, and we can move forward with any of them. Or we can come back to what you have and try to self-fund the remainder. Totally fair. Whatever helps the client feel more confident and comfortable that they are on the right track. We can see that we are only at 66% of the goal, but we have some actions we can take to move this ball forward. So that is a life insurance target map. It tends to be more simple to run because by default, I'm only using insurance. But as we move on here, we'll get into more complex target map situations and frankly, have some more fun with it. So let's head back now to the asset map for Fred and Wilma. And let's talk about your target map preferences because every advisor on this call is different. Let's set up your unique defaults so that every target map you run follows those preferences. Up in the top right, I've got my profile picture bubble. Might be a pair of initials if you don't have your picture set up yet. If you click on that bubble, it drops in a whole bunch of options. Target map preferences is here in the middle. I'm going to open this in a new tab right now and head over to it. And here are the defaults that I am using in every single target map that I run. What is your default expected net return on capital? I am using 6%. I think that's middle of the road. If you are a heavy equities investor, right, you're Nick Murray Jr., make that 7 or 8%. That's totally fair. Or you're more conservative, make it 5 or 4. It will make your target maps a bit harder to run, but if you can show a client success at a 4% rate of return, should make them feel pretty good because hopefully you are under-promising and overperforming. So enter in whatever default rate you want there, and you can always edit them on individual target maps going forward. I am just setting my global defaults here. Annual increase amount of those contributions, those cash flows, I tend to put 0 here because I have pensions, Social Security, retirement contributions, side hustles in retirement. They all have different rates of increase. Let's put 0 here and take care of those individually as they come up. What is your default retirement age? I am using normal Social Security age. What is your mortality age? I like 100 because I like a nice round number here. Let me show you making it all the way to the ripe old age of 100 and still having capital in the bank. If I can do that, you should feel pretty good. It is totally fair to make this a smaller number, 95, 90. It might be more accurate to certain clients' life expectancies, so feel free to change this wherever you'd like. I tend to like to show the most conservative estimates. Let me show you with a long longevity age. I can show you success, then awesome. You probably won't live that long, but if you do, we're prepared for it. And then the default starting point. I recommend every single user go to this section right here and choose what you want as your default starting point for target map conversations. Start at the beginning and work from left to right. Makes all the sense in the world. Then down below this, we have our tax assumptions. Now I'll dive deeper into our taxes in just a bit here when I go into the retirement target map. But I know that of these funding sources on the asset map, these cash flows, assets, sometimes insurances, some portion of it is not going towards funding these goals, but is instead going out the door to Uncle Sam or state and local governments. So let's account for some of that being lost to taxes. As far as your qualified money, let me be conservative here. Let me say Uncle Sam gets a quarter of it. And you know what? Let's give it to him now. Let's net those amounts out, use net numbers across the board, keep the math and the conversation a whole lot simpler because you know what? Taxes are a big unknown. I don't know what they look like in 5 years, not just 20 or 30 years, but I do know Uncle Sam gets some chunk of it. Let me assume a conservative chunk and show you success. Because if I can show you success in a target map at those conservative estimates, a low rate of return, a high tax rate, a long mortality age. If you're still successful with all those in place, you should feel pretty good because guess what? The rate of return, probably going to be higher because I know what I'm doing as your advisor. The longevity age, sorry to say, probably won't be 100. Might be more like in your 90s sometime or whatever your life expectancy is. And hey, the taxes, we're going to be as tax efficient as possible going forward. So this is probably a worst case scenario. Let me show you success in that scenario. When you're all set with these default numbers, save your changes and be aware that in each individual target map, I can adjust all of these manually. If I'm using the holistic plan integration, for example, I know my client's effective tax rate is more like 22 or 19. In their target map, I'll adjust those numbers. So a lot more on taxes here in just a bit. But next up, we'll look at the other types of target maps we can run. Loss of life, you just saw me run. These are all of my defaults here. If you want to put different numbers, please do. If you think transitional income is silly and you don't want to talk about it, uncheck the box. When you save these changes, now every loss of life target map you run will follow your own unique preferences. Disability, long-term care, both very similar in terms of I'm trying to replace income or fund for a care event. How do I do it? What do I have to fund it? Dependent education tends to be the next place I go here. It starts off simple. I want this much set aside for annual spending towards college funding or higher education. I want that to increase by 5% each year because I'm using today's dollars so that by the time we take it at age 18, this number is more accurate to what college might cost at that age. And then we have retirement, which we'll dive a whole lot deeper into in just a bit here. I split retirement into 3 categories: living, travel, medical. Some clients, or some advisors, excuse me, might just want to have one straight line income as the goal. Okay, great. Uncheck travel and medical. Just have this be the goal until age 100 at a certain COLA. There you go. How do we fund for it? I like to include travel and medical because I think it broadens out our conversation a bit more. So I tend to use all 3 of these. Travel is a fun topic. Hey, you've worked so hard. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? I'm going to give you this much income every year to go do it. Have fun. You've earned it. And then medical expenses is me saying, hey, you know what? There are costs beyond Medicare. For the last 20 years of your life at a slightly higher COLA, here is some additional income coming in to help pay for those medical needs. If you don't need it, put it towards your travel budget. Fine by me. But save those changes when you're all set. And now every retirement target map you run will follow these unique defaults to you. So let's head back now to the target map for Fred and Wilma. And let's talk about Pebbles and her college funding situation. So down here in the bottom right, you see I've got this 529 account at John Hancock. Let me open it up right now. And I will see that, yes, that value, $29,000, is pretty current. That's as of like last week. So I'll leave that alone. But I don't just want to check the current value. I also want to check in our details section. Are we currently contributing to this plan? Yes, we are putting in $300 a month to Pebbles College Fund from right now until she is 18 years old. So both of those come into play, not just the 29 grand growing by an assumed rate of return, but also the impact of that $3,600 annually coming in each year, growing, and eventually being used for these goals. We will use both of those sections in our upcoming target map. So we head over here to the left, click into target maps right there, do a new one here in the top right, and let's choose education, let's choose Pebbles, and let's click create. Alrighty, so once again, we start at the beginning. What do we want? What are we trying to fund for? Well, I'm looking at $30,000 for the 4 years she's in school, increasing by 5%. I need about 103. Now, many advisors ask, hey, John, what is that $30,000 in 2040? It's a great question. And those numbers live over here in the cash flow details, all the way on the right. We will take a quick peek right now. We'll dive a whole lot deeper during our retirement conversation. But if I open this up and scroll down, you will see that in the year 2040, that goal we have, I now need $45,000. Now, this first amount, it's prorated from when her 18th birthday is, sometime in April. But the first full year of tuition, or whatever we're paying for, from January 1st to December 31st in 2041, I need to have $65,000 to buy what 30 grand bought in college costs back in 2025. That is the impact of 30 grand up here growing by 5% each and every year. So if college gets a whole lot pricier, don't worry, that's a part of my math here. So we know what the goal is. What do we currently have? Well, here in our cash flow sources for college funding, I'm actually pulling from two different places. In the cash flow sources, I've got right there the current contributions coming into this 529 account from right now until 2040, her 18th birthday. So I have $3,600 coming in every year for the next 15 or so years. No COLA, we're not increasing that contribution. I could if I wanted to. And no taxation. Why? Because this is a 529 account. If I am using it, I am usually using it for qualified expenses. Therefore, all the growth is tax-free. So what is all of that worth today as a present value equivalent, as a pile of money? The answer is about $37,000. I am using present value equivalents across the board because, again, I want to know where we're at today and what we can do about it. But I'm not just using all those future contributions. I'm also, of course, using down here the actual asset value. This thing is currently worth $29,000. Nothing lost to taxes. All this growth is tax-free for qualified stuff. So I'm using the whole value. $29,000. So what I do is I add both of those up together. The asset value itself and the present value equivalent of all those future contributions. Today, they're worth together about $66,000. Now, what does it mean? Well, I need about 103. I have about 66. My deficit, therefore, is just about $37,000. Now, again, not the end of the world, the beginning of the conversation. This section up here is like a scratch pad. Take it with a big grain of salt. Because yes, the client could write me a check for 37 grand. I can grow it by 6% and will be fully funded. Or they can kick in $310 a month for the next 15 years. That'll get them funded too. Both of those scenarios are probably not going to happen. What's more likely is I, the advisor, want to tweak some variables on my end to make this bar go up. What I look at here is a 3-year-old kid who has 15 years before she touches this money. So knowing that's the case, we have a long time horizon. I think we can afford to be a bit more aggressive. What if we averaged out a 7% net return? What if we could do 1% better on growth net year over year? What does that look like? What's really cool about target maps is I can show you that change in seconds. Up this by 1. And look at this. The deficit goes from 37 grand all the way down to about $24,000. Awesome. Look what also went down though. The capital I'm required to have right now is a smaller number. Why is that? Because that net return on capital is a growth rate on my assets, but it also acts as a discount rate on those future cash flows. If I have $1 in this hand over here that I can earn 7% on, I need less dollars in that hand. than the one over here that only earns 6%. Makes sense? And I think that this is a kid who's got a bunch of time. I think I know how equities work. We can probably average out 8%. I think it's very attainable. What happens if we do that? Let's bump this up one more and look at this circle on the left. It goes from the third quadrant to the fourth and turns green. Green makes us feel good. Now, I have changed nothing else here. All I have done is show the impact of turning the gas up a little bit, earning a slightly higher net return, and look at how much closer we are to our goal because of that change. That is my first suggestion. Fred, Wilma, let's reallocate more aggressively, try to get 8%. Look at how much better we look. And they nod their heads and say, yeah, John, let's do it. Cool. There's my first takeaway from the conversation. But I expect Fred and Wilma will also have their own inputs. Hey, John, we've got Wilma's mother coming into town next week, and she wants to start contributing money to this plan. Can you show what this looks like if grandma kicks in $100 a month? Yes, I can. Absolutely. Easily in seconds. Go back to the what you have section here, scroll down, and we can add in our own custom cash flows. What if? What if grandma gives us some additional contributions, call it from grandma, link it to Pebbles. Grandma kicks in $100 a month or $1,200 a year until she's 18. Is grandma increasing that for COLA? Probably not. Are we being taxed on it? No, we are not, because it's all being used for qualified expenses. What does that impact have? Well, now look at the top. We've got that custom cash flow added here, not on the asset map, again, because this is my sandbox. But if grandma kicks in $1,200 a year, for the next 15 years, that has a present value equivalent of $11,000. What does it mean? It means we are almost there, right? This kid might be taking out about $2,500 in student loans. That is awesome. I wish I only owed $2,500 in student loans. Sounds amazing. But what's going to happen between now and the time this kid turns 18? A whole bunch of stuff. So every time we get together, we're going to update, review, and refresh this strategy. If she has invested this aggressively, it's not unthinkable in a good bull market, she might have a 20% bump in a year. Well, if that occurs, I'm going to head back to the asset map, update those numbers, and see how the target map has been affected. But for now, we have a good starting point. Let's reallocate more aggressively, and let's ask grandma to kick in some money, because if we do those two things, look at how much better this target map looks. So that is a high-level view at education funding target maps and how we can use them live with clients and update variables to have some really powerful conversations. Now the part you all been waiting for. Retirement funding. Am I going to outlive my money, or can my money outlive me? Well, in a retirement target map, what happens is I stop taking these incomes. But you know what? The profit share, the pension, the rental, both of our Social Securities, those will keep coming in and funding our retirement goals. We've also got all of our qualified money here, not just the assets, but also any amounts we are currently contributing. For Wilma, 16 grand every year until she is 67. So both of those fields come into play, the asset and the contributions. And then down below here, we've got all these green tiles, which are non-qualified or non-retirement. So I'm not going to include them by default, but I can use them in retirement funding. For example, here, the brokerage account. This is full of Carnival Cruise stock. That's their travel money. We can feel free to check that one on manually. But we've got enough to go on here. Let's head over to the left, click into target maps, do a new target map up here in the top right, and choose retirement funding as my starting point. Choose Fred and Wilma as my target and click create. Now, in a matter of seconds, we've got our starting point. What do we want? Well, I know what my defaults say, but I want to make sure I put Fred and Wilma's numbers in here so I can override any of these. I'm going to pull this up here and say, hey, Fred, Wilma, I've got a number to start with here, but I want to know, when you're retired, how much income do you think you'll want coming in every year to pay for your basic living expenses? And they might say, John, you know what? Let's keep it simple. Give us like 100 grand each. Awesome. I like nice round numbers here. I'm going to start giving that to you, Fred, on your 67th birthday, funding all the way until you die peacefully in your sleep, holding hands side by side on Fred's 100th birthday. Click update. Now, what do I have to have today in capital to fund that living expenses, or that amount every year? About $3 million. Okay, great. We know what the first line item is. Next up here is travel. I want to make sure I put the client's goals in here. Hey, is 3 grand a month enough to travel on? And they might say, you know what, John, make it an even 50 grand a year. We're going to rent an RV and go to every music festival in the country. Okay, great. Increasing by 2% each year until you're 80 years old. Now, Wilma can say, hey, my mom had longevity. Can I travel to 85? Absolutely. There you go right there. Click update. And then we have medical expenses. Ugh, costs beyond Medicare. Well, you know what? They do come up. Let's not be caught by surprise. If you were 80 today, would 3 grand a month be enough for unexpected medical expenses? And they say, you know what? For now, that's good. Okay, great. Because I'm going to increase it by 3%. It's going to be more than 3 grand a month, but the last 20 years of your life, there's going to be some extra income just for medical stuff. If you don't need it for medical stuff, put it towards your travel budget, whatever feels good to you. So what do I have to have today in capital to fund this retirement dream successfully and sustainably? About $3.87 million. Now, what do we currently have? From this section, I am pulling over a lot of details from the asset map because in retirement, guess what? We are turning on every faucet we can. The rental income, we've got 30 grand a year coming in. Is it coming in right as rain for the next 40 years of our lives? I have no idea. That rental could burn down in 10 years for all we know. But for right now, it is a part of their plan. So let's assume about a quarter of it is out the door for taxes every year. And what is the present value equivalent, net of taxes, of all that future rental income? The answer is about $357,000. Awesome. There's my first line item. Then we have friend's pension down here. Small pension, but coming in forever. About a quarter for taxes. That's about $60,000 in present value. Wilma's profit share, is she running her business for 40 years? I have no idea, but for now, she has no plans to sell it, so we keep it on there. A quarter for taxes every year, that's about 717. Social Security will get adjusted here because by default, I have no COLA, but we know that Social Security does increase if inflation goes up. So let me match that COLA to what was on the other end, 2%. I'm also assuming we are less taxed on that because we tend to be in a better tax situation in retirement. So we click update there. Do the same thing for Wilma down here. Give her a COLA bump and click update. And that's going to increase that present value by quite a bit. And then we are going to oversimplify down here the retirement contributions. The pre-tax amounts, 16 grand, 18 grand, and the Roth. On the pre-tax amounts, I am going to take a quarter out for taxes upfront every year they come in, which is oversimplified. We don't actually pay that tax until way later in life when we're taking out our retirement distributions. For the sake of a target map here, let's keep the math very simple. Let's say Uncle Sam gets a quarter, and let's see what your net amount that belongs to you is, and let's use that in our math. So I add up all these net present values of all those future contributions. Scroll down, I'm doing the same thing for the assets. Wilma's old 401k, 200 grand in there. Hey, about a quarter, that's not your money, Wilma. Let's use the 150 that belongs to you. Let's take Uncle Sam's chunk, pay him now, he goes away. We are just using net numbers across the board here to make the conversation a whole lot simpler for you and your husband. So we scroll down a bit more and we've got all these non-qualified sections, which are by default not checked on because they're non-qualified. But if I know that this brokerage account is their travel fund, let's check it on. And now that 200,000, I'm taking about 10% out for taxes because I tend to have better tax treatment on those accounts, tax loss harvesting, capital gains, all that good stuff. Let's use about 180 of that. And the Roths, of course, no taxation, use those full amounts. So I go to the top here, and I now see that across the entire asset map, everything I'm using for retirement has a net present value equivalent of about $3.4 million. Now, what does this mean? Well, to meet these goals we said were important, we need 3.87. We currently have about 3.4. My deficit, therefore, is just a little short of being $500,000. Now, again, is this client going to write me a check right now for $500,000? No, probably not. Are they going to kick in $7,800 a month for the next 6 years? No, probably not. But it gives me a place to start the conversation from. For retirement target maps, I tend to build the first one and leave it alone. You want to see how it works out? Check out these cash flow details. Open this page up, expand all of these sections, and here's how it works. Here we are in 2025. We are taking in all these after-tax cash flows from today until the end of the year and adding them up. I'm also taking all these assets, what they are worth today, taking the taxation out and netting them out. At the end of this year, I have a net capital balance of about $1.34 million. Now, every year I can continue to add in these cash flows, the net rental amount, profit share, and retirement contributions. Altogether, about 101 grand coming into that pile every single year. And I am growing this pile by a straight blended return of 6%. Net blended return, keep it simple. We know how things grow, right? They go up 20%, down 7, up 3. Those are all unknowns. Let's keep it simple and use an average all the way down. We retire here at some point in 2031, start to take down our retirement income, excuse me. Then we also turn on Social Security around this time. Every year, a bit more for COLA. How far do we make it in this scenario till we're out of capital? In this one, we make it all the way to age 89. At some point in 2053, we are going into the red. That's not ideal. If our goal was 90, we're almost there, but our goal is 100. So what can we do? Well, this is where I come back to my main target map screen. I double click this name and I give this one a new name. I'm going to call this my retirement baseline at a 6% rate of return. If I change nothing else about the plan here, we are at 88% of our goal. Okay, great. That's pretty good. But what can we do differently here? Well, what I like to do is mark this one off, right? Put this little bullseye icon here, and that'll tell me that, hey, this is my main retirement target map. If I change nothing, here's the track we're on. But now that I've got this baseline built, let's clone it. Let's make ourselves a carbon copy of this scenario, and let's change one high-level feature here. Let's say that, hey, in this one, let's show the impact of earning a 1% higher net return on capital. Click update right there. Now, in a matter of seconds, look at this difference. Now, you and I know how the power of compound interest works. Some clients don't. This is the part where they have that light bulb moment. And they say, oh, this is why we invest, because look at the difference 1% makes if I am earning that. Want to see how it works out? Sure. Open this target map up right here. Go into the cash flow details. I have changed nothing else except for the rate of return by 1%. So every year earning 1% more gets me how much farther? All the way to age 95. We bought ourselves 6 or 7 years just by earning a slightly higher return on the assets there. Well, that looks good, right? What do we have to do to get this thing fully funded, though? So you can keep going. You can clone and show all sorts of different scenarios. Let me take Social Security a couple of years later. Let me retire earlier. Let me retire later, right? Or I go into here, into what you have, and we get creative. And I say, hey, Wilma, running your business, it's a pain in the neck, isn't it? What if we turned off the profit share? You stop taking that income, and instead we scroll down here and we sell your business tomorrow. Now the business has a loan on it for $500,000. Let's net that out, 1.1 million. Does not affect the value of the business on the asset map. Remember, this is a total sandbox. I can change the numbers here. So we sell it today, pay about 20% in taxes, and what impact does that have? Well, we sell it for 1.1 million, we pay our taxes 20%, we go into our cash flow details here, and you can see the difference. What is the difference? The shot in the arm right up front. We sell the business today for $880. We start earning 7%. Now look at this. The profit share is no longer coming in. That's the trade-off. But I think it's a good trade-off because with that $880 working for us, we now make it all the way to age 100 with almost 1.7 million bucks in the bank for our beneficiaries. Is that what's going to happen? No, absolutely not. I have no idea what happens between now and 2064. No one does. If they say they do, they're lying to you. All I know is where we're at today and what the math says projected forward. This is not meant to be your 40-year financial plan. I don't think 40-year financial plans are all that useful because as soon as one variable changes, the whole thing's out the window. This is more like 41-year financial plans we keep reviewing, refreshing, and adjusting. Where are we at today and what can we do? Well, is Wilma going to sell her business tomorrow? Probably not. But I've showed her a scenario now where that might make more sense than continuing to take profits year after year. So if in the next year she gets a good offer on the business, she might consider it. I can now rearrange these target maps. I've got three of them, put them in descending order, and show her the old good, better, best approach. One, two, three, grab all three of them, click compare, and here are all three retirement scenarios side by side by side. Do I want to change things? Sure. Wilma says, hey, I think I can earn 8%. What if I earn 8%, keep taking the profits in the business? Well, Wilma, yes. If you can do that, you are overfunded, you'll make it. But what if you sell the business and get 8%? What does that look like? Well, if you do that, now you have a capital surplus of what, $400,000 or something, right? Yeah, 450 right there. Beautiful. You don't need a surplus. You can retire earlier or take more income, whatever you want to do, right? So I've built these target maps. They are in the system now. I can give you an individual PDF on each of them, or in my comprehensive report down here, I put the whole packet together. The cover page, the asset map, all these great target maps with or without the cash flow. Let me include this one that has them having, 1.6 million at the end of their life. Why not? Notes, balance sheet, disclosure, whatever you want to put in here. But putting all this together, estimated page count is only going to be 10. That is a whole lot more digestible than a big, thick 80-page packet. I can generate this PDF and show the client, right? Give it to them in an email and say, here are your next steps. Fred, give me a statement on Social Security. Wilma, give me something in your old 401k, etc. Or I print it out and mail it to them with a note from the advisor. Any way you slice it, that client now knows exactly where they're at today and what my next steps are moving forward as their advisor. So that is the entire target map conversation from A to Z. I realize it's a lot of information. If you have questions, now's a great time to ask. Your homework from here is to take what you've learned and go build some target maps out. I have many different advisors using target maps in unique ways. At the end of the day, this is all about having a better client conversation. They are following and understanding. If you are doing that, you are doing it right. So build a few target maps, do the push-ups, figure out your own process here. If you would like help in that regard, reach out to us. We have a whole bunch of great articles, videos, and our team is here to help. Call, chat, or email. You want to look at a target map together? We love giving feedback on that stuff. Reach out to us. And if you are in our onboarding flow, this has been your second training call. Reach out to your onboarding advisor for your third call to complete the picture or connect all the dots. Our job here in training you an asset map is to build up your confidence so that you're putting these maps in front of clients and having great conversations. If there was anything we can do to help you get there, please reach out. We're happy to help. Otherwise, I'll be here for a minute or two longer. If there are questions, I'll answer them. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. Be good at it, and we look forward to seeing all the great success stories you'll have using Asset Map. Take care and have a good one. We'll talk soon.